Sir, with your permission, good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon to those who are following us via streaming. Great challenge for me this afternoon, and a great honor as well, because it is indeed a privilege to represent the best directors ever, as Thorsten pointed out. Indeed, it was indeed really a great opportunity, a golden opportunity for all of us to go through the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats to the Alliance and the COEs alike. However, SWOT for what, as it was mentioned by several colleagues, the latter being our yo-yo. But you know, these events really enhance the esprit de corps between the COEs, but between the directors. So I'm really moved by the enthusiasm, which was even sometimes brought some criticalities, but it was an open forum under Chatham House rule, which as we applied, but it helped us indeed to have to come up with some consideration. So, without further ado, sir, with your permission, I will go through the strengths of our analysis, what is the what. So we agreed that the what is the benefit of the Alliance and the benefit of the COEs. The Alliance is the primary customer of the COEs. But we have even to be cognizant that we work under the framework nation and the sponsoring nation guidance and the steering committee guidance. So one of the key points of the items which we highlighted amongst those in the strength is indeed the fact that we are independent, and so we do not have a straight chain of command. However, so it allows for more flexibility and autonomy. On the other hand, this is an additional value, and the additional value is a disposal of the Alliance first and foremost, and the sponsoring nation alike. However, the wide range of subject matter covered by the COEs bring about a huge amount of expertise which otherwise will not be available to the Alliance, not only to ACT, but you will be hearing from us even to SEO and NATO quarters, maybe even beyond. Let's think about the NATO summit declaration, what they speak about. So there is a huge amount of motivation and positive qualities across the COE, and the commitment of my fellow directors speaks volumes about it. And then talking about the credibility of the centers, which should be a given, it goes hand in hand with the legitimacy. So the more NATO hinges on the COEs, the better. It provides, it enhances our credibility and the legitimacy across the Alliance and even beyond. And everybody agreed on the fact that we want to keep the accreditation. So we want to have the stamp and the aegis of NATO in our shields. There is something which was pointed out by Emmanuel very righteously in French, but my French is worse than my English. So the constructive ambiguity. So we have one step in the Alliance, but one step outside of the Alliance, which enhances our capability to look out of the box. And then the autonomy which we enjoy allows us to interact with a large host of stakeholders, which range from academia to industry to other international entities, which otherwise would be very difficult to reach out. So these are the strengths. Weaknesses are, unfortunately, so if there are strengths, there are even weaknesses. We rely on resources from sponsoring nations, which are already very committed with NATO. So these are limited somehow the flexibility of our program of work and our freedom of action. even because the strict timelines that sometimes we receive even from our counterparts and by NATO or by the other stakeholders. So it somehow translates even in a limited access to NATO structural process because we are not that much known across the alliance. Despite we are very dynamic, and despite we do deliver niche capabilities, niche ideas, which will not be available otherwise to the alliance. I forgot to say, whatever I forget, please, sir, please feel free to chip in as my future successor in this capacity, which comes from free guys. There is no additional salary. Somehow everything is interconnected in our weaknesses, sir, because the SWOT analysis allow us to identify that, unfortunately, we lack of personnel, we lack of skilled personnel. There is some difficulty to share information, and to this aim we have already a proposal in place, the COE Director Network, which we already informally established last year in spring. So what about trying to be more visible? Because we realize that we are not sufficiently visible, not only the world of our normal counterparts with academia, with our usual community of interest, but in ACT sometimes, because it brings to overlapping of effort, the needs for the confliction, and it brings even duplication of effort sometimes, because we are not that visible, and so several stakeholders, action officers, or OPR task us or ask for our support from different offices, and sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand does. But we need to be not only visible, but even recognized, understood about what we do. So, again, another consequence is the lack of prioritization of our work, because all the requests which we receive, sum up with other requests, and we need to understand which are the priorities. And even our counterpart need to understand that we cannot reply timely to their requests because of other priorities. And then the lesson learned process in NATO, this is something which we clearly need to be part of. And we have been struggling, and now we have a golden opportunity to be part of the lesson learned of the international community and NATO in Afghanistan. But it is something which we have been almost begging for. So we would like to have a more active role, because we have an host on information available for the alliance. And we know that there is a lesson learned process on Afghanistan ongoing. Opportunities. Through the nations, we can fetch their support in order to have more influence on the development and the planning process. We are capable to propose, we need to find even innovative ways of managing the COE in order to attract the COEs. But how? How can we improve the appetite to join the COEs in the other nations? So we will come up with an idea in a couple of minutes, as well as harnessing the tools and processes to increase the profile of the COE. It goes back to the legitimacy, the credibility of the role, also a strength of the center. The same applies on our network. The more we interact, the more we increase our network, the better, because the stakeholder will increase, the community of interest will enlarge. Another opportunity maybe is to rely on ACT, on your capacity to engage more with ACTO, but even with NATO quarters, in order to prioritize, but even advocate for COEs. This, in turn, I think, more advocacy, more work for the COE, more visibility, and more deliverables from the COEs will translate in an improved return on the investment of the sponsoring nation. Otherwise, nations keep putting money on our centers, but then the deliverables maybe are not up to the standards for some nations, and maybe even for ACT. So another opportunity we identified was the ability to better shape the priority of our program of works. However, this is even requires an action, we think, from ACT. So maybe we should interact a little bit earlier with ACT on our program of works. I mean, now it's time to have the steering committees, so the program of work is going to be submitted or is already under evaluation from the steering committees. So the sooner we start, the better. So we should reconsider the timelines for both us and ACT, because it's important even for us to know which are the priorities for ACT, being NATO the primary customer. Partnership is something which is somehow redundant, but because we believe that networking is paramount for us, and partnership enhances networking, but even enhances the deliverables of the centers, because the partnership is not only outward-looking, but is even within the COEs. So we'll come up with a nice sort of idea of a sort of federated approach among COEs. So in order to have clusters of COEs more amalgamated and have a more coordinated approach in our activities. This goes to the last point, but I forgot to mention the e-learning bullet. Is an opportunity. E-learning is increasing. The COVID brought numerous challenges, but even numerous opportunities, and each one of us did invest in e-learning, but it could be an opportunity even for our personnel in order to develop their skills. Lastly, the threats are, to keep up the pace, we are under pressure. NATO is continuously evolving, and we appreciate that. We want to stay fit for purpose, as the title goes. However, we consider it is a threat. It is as a threat, even because of the problems which we highlighted, the weaknesses which we highlighted. So if we lack of skilled personnel, we cannot keep the pace properly. But if there is no appetite from the countries, how can we have skilled personnel? So everything is really interconnected. What is nice is that the 4 working group came up with very similar consideration. So insufficient resources, workforce, and communication tools. Again, it's not something relevant to unclassified tools, because everybody agrees on the fact that Transnet, so I need to remove the mask if you don't mind, I keep social distancing, but maybe you can hear me better. It's not just a matter of unclassified means of communication, but we do acknowledge the fact that the unclassified means of communication are very expensive, and they do not allow for enough coordination. But we acknowledge the fact that we have plenty of tools, unclassified tools, and the COE Director Network is an additional means of communication, information sharing to foster cooperation informal cooperation between COEs. Expectation management. So we need to understand better what are NATO, the alliance expectations, not only at the ACT level, but also at ACO and NATO quarters level. So we'll come up with another action item, if I may. I skipped this point before, sorry. Governance, policy, and politics. Could be weird, but are all the nations so committed to support the COEs? We felt, or we still feel it, somehow a threat to our performance. So maybe we, even the COE director, we need to learn how to better advocate for the support from the sponsoring nation, but not only sponsoring nation, even for wannabe members of our clubs. It goes back to the appetite of the COEs personnel, to the appetite to join COEs. And we have an idea for that. there is somehow competition, is horizontal and vertical. Horizontal sometimes between COEs. We have to admit it because our subject matter might be or are indeed cross-cutting, and there is overlapping, sorry. But even, so I would say horizontal, but in a vertical perspective, because some of our COEs are not capable to keep up the pace with other challenges brought about by the Alliance or by the current situation worldwide. And then, I mean, I don't know whether you want to chip in on this or the share wallet issue, but it goes back to financial resources because there is indeed the need to have enough resources to carry out the project, and there is another proposal on this. Another threat, which is connected to our strengths somehow and the weaknesses, relevance, reputation. If we have enough legitimacy, which we highlighted, we believe that we have even some credibility, by the same token, we can lose relevance or reputation if the Alliance doesn't exploit the unique means of the COE, the additional value, the golden opportunity to utilize the COEs. It might translate in lack of visibility, so we will less coordinate amongst each other and with the ACT, and then we might be stuck in the swarm of the bureaucracy. So we will lose agility, whilst we say that our autonomy allows for more freedom of action. So it is interconnected, but there are several threats. I don't know whether you have any question on this, sir.
No, thank you, Colonel. I think the variety of topics and themes ahead is too wide to have a question at this moment. Probably we may have a later informal conversation and talk about this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other alibis? Action points. Here we are. We will submit a two-pager to this activity, asking to reconsider the allocation of ACT FOGO champions. Remember what we said before about the cluster approach, the federated approach of the COEs. Because sometimes the FOGOs deal with so different subject matters, so across the three, from one domain to the other one, so it could be really misleading. So our consideration is to have matters of common interest within the same cluster. And so this will improve, will foster coordination between the same COEs in the cluster, so under the same FOGO. And maybe even the FOGO champion will have a background relevant to the subject matter, or the subject matters, beg your pardon. Marketplace, something which we have been discussing a lot. Do we need it yearly? Do we need it on cluster basis? Do we need it? So we go back to your provocation. So what for what? What we need for the marketplace? We need to advocate for the COEs. We would like to involve the NATO highest echelon. And so we agreed by majority, I must admit, so that we would like to have a marketplace sooner than later, but not during the summertime as it happened in 2019. We would like to be closely involved, so the date should be identified in close consultation with the COEs. Otherwise, it might impact our already clogged programs of work. So the date, if I may, interpreting my colleagues' will, might be even proposed from our side. So, but the point is, the highest we reach the NATO highest echelon, the better. So it's better to have only one day. However, and it goes to the proposal of the Commodore guy, we will even propose a different level of our participation, and so a sort of a smaller event, marketplace event, in DVD days in the margins of exercises. So we go back to the federated approach, to the ad hoc cluster approach. So only some COEs will show up to the relevant exercise. So in this way, we will have a single event where NATO seniors will gather to attend the DVD day, and the COEs will be allowed to showcase. Third bullet. We were talking about a sort of, not forum, because we don't need another layer, we don't need another big event, but we will ask ACT to promote as much as they can our role within SEO and NATO quarters. There is not yet common understanding of our activities, of our performance, our skills and capabilities. The same applies for NATO projects, sir, because we are not involved in the early stages of the project. So when they remember that we exist, maybe it's too late. Our input may be even groundbreaking, but then since we are at a later stage, they come too late, and the OPR doesn't want to reshuffle the entire concept of the entire document. So the sooner we get involved, hopefully, really, when we start from scratch, the better. And then you remember when I spoke about the appetite of nations to send personnel to join the center. What about a scoring system for COE personnel contribution? Almost drawing to an end. We will kindly ask to this activity to interact with, to liaise with the FOGOs, to reach out their counterparts both in SEO and NATO quarters, because our additional value is to be made very clear. Once again, the earlier they know, the earlier they involve us. So maybe through maybe a letter which outlines once again, but NATO is comprised of staff officers which rotate, so it's a sort of reminder which we can keep aside every now and then launch every now and then. And remember all the procedures, or maybe in the easiest way to reach out the COEs, but in a very agile fashion, because then if we send them a 200-pager document, they will not read it, because it will be too complicated and maybe too long, less interesting. Next, please. Unfortunately, most of us, if I may say, missed the train on the NATO warfighting capstone concept and the DDA. We were not involved at all. If we were involved, we were involved really at a later stage. These are really crucial in NATO strategy. So we do know the IWDA, the initial warfighting development agenda, is due to be finalized the next month. We would have liked to be involved before, but we can better support, and we would like to be involved in this work strand more rather than just in a listening mode. Because they will inspire NATO action the next year, and because we are adamant in saying that we can provide really an additional value. We were talking about the POW, the program of work cycle. The earlier we engage, and the earlier ACT engages with us, the better. So it will allow us to amend, if needed, accordingly, our program work in accordance with NATO priorities. Otherwise, we are disjointed. it's not just, asking something, but, we did our own work, and we agreed on the fact that we must work harder, and we must work on the best practices, which we daily learn, and with learning identify. We have to develop these best practices more within our network, and the establishment last year of the network is really instrumental to this aim, sir. And so we will, for sure, take forward all the outputs of our SWOT analysis, the directors' SWOT analysis, both in our internal organization, so in our COEs, and across this band of brothers in front of me, because it's really a band of brothers, and I will be bragging for a life about it. And the next step from our side will be a VTC on 18 November, 1600 hours, directors only, where we'll take forward these items, but in the meantime, we'll compile a report with the support of our moderators and young disruptors. We will agree on the nitty-gritties of the report, and then I will submit the report to the SACTI accordingly. Pending your questions, sir. Unless any one of you would like to add something, sir. Yeah. Then there is another point, yes. In December, I will hand over to Commodore Guy. So the Commodore wishes to say a few words about his next future tenure. So I don't know whether you want to take the floor now, sir, or you want to give him the... Okay, sir, the floor is yours.
Sir and fellow brothers and sisters, and of course the young disruptors and the SA and SACT staff. First of all, it's always dangerous to speak on such a disparate and an intellectually powerful group of people, but I'm going to say something on all of our behalves, and that is, well done to you, Pino. First of all, for neatly summarizing a very rich couple of days of discussion, but more widely for your energy and your persistence in pulling us together into a cohesive network, and of course for the fantastic organization that has gone into the last couple of days. And as you know, I say that with some feeling as I look ahead to next year. But I just want to say, thank you and well done. And then just in terms of what Colonel Di Magistri has just summarized, we are resolved to keep the momentum going. So the virtual meeting on the 18th of November is just the next step in that. And then my vision is that we will continue to engage periodically. And next year is not it's not a conference that happens in a year's time. It's simply another step in this continuous engagement. And we've got to be careful because we've all got busy day jobs and we don't want to be doing meetings for the sake of meetings. But I think we're all agreed that there is real power in comparing notes and working together. Noting, of course, that we're not all the same and we have differing priorities. But there are some really key unifying strands, and that's what we need to focus on for our collective benefit. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. In terms of next year, we have yet to set a date, but a factor in holding an event in Norfolk is the climate. So we'll try and avoid the hottest and the coldest parts of the year, and I think there'll be a couple of proposals, one around the earlier part of the year and one around the late summer. But we'll mull that over, and I'll discuss that with you in a little more detail in November, because I'm still waiting for a couple of other moving parts in the calendar to coalesce. So, but we'll certainly aim, and barring any other unforeseen pandemics or events, we'll aim for an full in-person event in Norfolk. And the real advantage of that, apart from everything that Norfolk has to offer in terms of architecture and cuisine, is of course the fact that ACT is in Norfolk, and so we've got a wonderful opportunity to get all of our FOGO champions in the same place at the same time with all of our directors. And that is something that we will carefully choreograph so that we can make the most of that opportunity. And I think we've agreed that there's a real value in just devoting some time to sharing good ideas and best practice, the sort of practical, administrative, managerial, perhaps the less glamorous side of things, but those sort of good ideas that make our lives easier, and we've got an awful lot to learn from each other. So I think we'll set some time aside to focus on the practical side of things, but then we also want to make sure that we really focus on the cognitive side of things, the output. So there's sort of an inputs and an outputs piece. And we will work together over the next year to put together the program both practically and cognitively, and it is my intent to do that absolutely as a collaborative endeavour with all of us here. So that's my in terms of suggestions for menus and venues. Any suggestions welcome, of course, but we'll work through that and then we'll offer you some proposals in due course. And I look forward to hearing your inputs. Give it some thought, and I look forward to hearing your inputs when we speak together again.
Sir, the floor is yours.
Dear directors, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and thank you, Giuseppe, for giving us this briefing. I expected to receive a report, and then we will analyze the situation. As the final speaker at this event, it is my firm belief and privilege to state that the event of the last few days was very successful, and the credit should be given to Colonel Giuseppe De Magistris and Colonel Francesco Pacillo, and of course their respective teams. Many people has prized both the excellent setup and outstanding social program, to which I add my admiration. I will also applaud the wide attendance, both by the NATO Accredited Centre of Excellence directors, but also the valuable presence of the director of the European Centre of Excellence for Countering the Hybrid Threats, the NATO HQ International Staff Representative from Defence Investment Division, the Deputy Director of the Centre for Maritime Research and Experimentation, and of course our fellow SHAPE and Sat Repair College. A word also to the moderators and young professionals for your creativity and for helping us approaching our challenges from a different angle. I am a strong supporter of the idea of Colonel De Magistris that taking forward Centre of Excellence requires your active participation. We have all become used to online meetings, but as we start to conduct in-person meetings, it becomes more and more obvious that nothing can truly replace this personal engagement. Therefore, my special thanks to you all for your continuous inputs. I think that only in this way can we better share our ideas, candidly sometimes discuss our differences, different point of view, and improve our wider coordination. I am confident that this is the only way to continuously operate and adapt to deepen the cooperation among us on our relevant projects, which fits the theme of the conference, Evolve to Stay Fit for Purpose. Given COVID and turbulence, this has been my only COE Director Conference so far, and indeed it might be my only one as I leave next summer. But the opportunity to reflect on the way forward with very diverse and fruitful views have been invaluable. I will not repeat the outcomes of the discussion from this afternoon, but just mention that me and my team look forward to your report. I will carefully look where you need ACT help and support, be my staff or wider ACT network in particular in those areas outside administrative issues. For me, to avoid any generic discussion on Centre of Excellence relevance and visibility, and to make impression, we need to be able to highlight the substance of your products, as well as the practicality and prioritization to the message and proposal that come from this conference. When I opened this conference, I mentioned that we are at a time of evolving concept, be it DDA, NWCC, NATO 2030, and the evolving strategic concept. There is both an opportunity and a threat here. And we and you all clamor for information and clear direction and guidance. I am aware that we, ACT, are the conduit to keep you informed. But in return, I ask for your ideas on how you might support and take the lead in certain areas. Today, in all fairness, I should conclude with my recognition, once again, to Colonel Giuseppe Di Magistri and his superb team for this organizing this event with such a high degree of patience, tenacity, and extremely sound judgment during the last month in such a beautiful UNESCO heritage site. And finally, to Commodore Tongai, the bar has been set very high for the next year. To, as you put it, sharpen your sword for the next year. I wish you all safe travel back home. Thank you for your attention.
Sir, I will ask my colleagues now, we need some formalities, and then you are kindly requested to stay a couple of seconds just to have a look to the transportation details, and then you are dismissed, even though because it's pouring, so you might need to wait for a while. Once again, sir, I must thank all the fellow directors. It was a beautiful journey. The young disruptors, the moderators, thank you to you all. Nothing could have happened without the team. Really in unison, we move forward, and this is really stronger together, as we said before, with the Commodore guy, and who did help me a lot in this endeavor, but it was a collective effort. I already mentioned yesterday in an informal setting. Let me ask, please, a round of applause for Mark, Olga, Bob, Ivan, and the remaining staff who support me from the LS section and from the FinCom, because, again, we are focused on our matters. The COE works on its own battle rhythm, but then the conference is an additional challenge. And it's not only a challenge, but it's even an additional burden. So we are used to work. We are used to work under pressure. We are cops, and we are in the law enforcement. So, but nothing could have been done with their support. Where is David as well? Here you are, David Ellero. Unfortunately, he was busy with something else in the last days, but yesterday he jumped in, and he was very effective. Then there is Mauro, there is Antonio, there is where is Giovanni? I mean, the director needed somebody from the branches to support it. So please, a round of applause for all of them. And I mean it. I hope I haven't forgotten anybody, Luca, Angelo, and the team. This is the team, and without them I cannot do anything. Again, it's just a conference. We are used to have different challenges, but this is another kind of challenge. We must be professional, not only in our work, but even in something which is out of our comfort zone. So a conference is out of our comfort zone. No? It's easier to chase a criminal, maybe, not with a tank, but it's easier. Now, before leaving, I would like to, sir, with your permission, present you with the coat of arms of the center.
night.